Hello, my name is Peter Bonanno, Director of Program Development for the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, here with your behind the curtains walkthrough of Module 2 of the Search Inside Yourself program. That's day 1 in the afternoon. Participants will have just come back from lunch, and as you've seen in the teacher guide, we recommend now's a good chance to do an energizer or something to get participants moving around the room. It is the afternoon when energy can be low. Once we do that, we then move on to sharing about mindful eating, that this is a practice that you can take away, and to ask participants about their reflections from doing the mindful eating practice at lunch. Next, we share our roadmap that we're going to be moving into self-management. And we share that if self-management could be summarized in 2 words, it could be from compulsion to choice. Here we call back to the quote that we shared earlier in the program and highlight in particular that self-management can help in maintaining that space between stimulus and response, especially in very challenging situations. We give a definition for self-management. We share what it's not, which tends to be very important to highlight that this is not about managing or regulating ourselves away from our own experience or denying what we're experiencing, but that instead it's about navigating. It's about the opportunity to take on life's challenges, to be within the river and flow of our work and family life, and to be our best, to feel we can be at our best in those situations. We begin with this idea of how to respond to triggers, to situations which elicit a very fast, immediate emotional reaction. Here we show this diagram again, building on something that participants have seen earlier in Module 1. And the key thing we're highlighting here is the very basic idea that when our bodies have sent ourselves into threat response mode, we tend to not engage in the sort of deliberative, integrative, longer-term thinking that we might when we're in conditions of safety. And this is a really good thing to know both for ourselves and for when we're working with other people who are feeling stressed or feeling threatened, that there is a physiological basis for why it can be so hard to make sound decisions or wise decisions in those times. We then share, moving towards what can we do about this short video clip from Dr. Philippe Golden. In the next slide, we share his model again and have the chance to give some commentary on how our regulatory systems can come online afterwards, after an emotional event has happened, and upregulate or downregulate the emotion based on how we make sense of the situation. And then share a practice which can help us give our best response to triggers, and that is the SBNRR. Note that in the teacher guide, as we lead into the SBNRR meditation, we do have very detailed steps about how to bring participants into this experience. For example, having them think of what their situation is before we get into doing the SBNRR, so that as they're doing the meditation itself, they're not wondering, wait, which situation should I practice with? Maybe I should do this one. No, maybe I should do that one. We really help them land on something and then to evoke the emotion of that situation, and then having evoked the emotion of it to then work with it using the SBNRR steps. After doing the SBNRR practice, we move into a mindful conversation. This is both a skill which can be very useful in itself, and it's also a way to help debrief what participants experienced as they went through the SBNRR process and as they brought up this challenge. So here we share the different steps and then ask for comments about these exercises. We then share, these are 2 takeaway practices that we've covered, mindful conversation and the SBNRR. Notably, the SBNRR can be done both as a dedicated practice and as an integrated practice. And then we move on to the next stage of self-management. This is a very simple and useful model that comes from Oshner and Gross. And the idea here is that we've just worked more on the front end of the trigger in the SBNRR of managing where we put our attention, stopping, breathing to reinforce the sacred pause. And then we get a bit into the reframing about what does the situation mean for me, what might be going on for the other person. And here, what Oshner and Gross show is that over time, what tends to be a useful emotional management strategy, but often doesn't feel easy to do right when an event has happened, is acceptance. So as a strategy for acceptance, we introduce self-compassion and the 3 steps from Kristen Neff. We then share some of the reasons why people feel concerned about bringing that sense of acceptance for oneself, compassion for oneself, and often has to do for many people, especially in the business world, with this feeling that we need to keep that really harsh voice in our minds at all times because that's what's going to motivate us and keep us going. But actually what the research has shown is that there is this possibility of maintaining both a motivation to change, to correct past mistakes, to learn from others, to put an effort, that these things actually can be stronger when we have an attitude of compassion towards ourselves. And here we give a summary from that study by these 2 researchers. We then move into a self-compassion reflection. The idea here is to create the underlying emotional tone of self-care, of warm-heartedness towards ourselves, of self-acceptance. And then to transition right from that experience and that emotional tone into a journaling exercise. We give the instructions for that here. We really encourage participants to put themselves into the shoes of being a close friend or mentor, even writing a letter, dear so-and-so, like I'm addressing it to myself. And after having done the journaling, we move into a mindful listening exercise for people to process what came up for them as the self-compassion meditation and the journaling help them to hold their situation and view their situations in a new light. Often this flow creates a sense of emotional uplift to end day 1. Self-compassion is something that often helps us view our problems in a new way and feel that we can find a new sense of peace in meeting our challenges. So it can be a really nice way to end that first day of the program. We take comments from participants. And here we give, once again, the micro practice version of the self-compassion practice we just did. We call this the acceptance micro practice. This, again, is a slogan, something that a phrase that we can bring to mind in order to help shift our mental orientation when we're feeling overwhelmed. We name the practices that we've just covered in the second part of the self-management section and ask for ideas about when these practices might be useful. And then we move into a recap of what we've covered so far in all of day 1. We then give participants the opportunity to brainstorm in groups about what they might take away from the day. And here we put this practices summary slide up on the screen during that brainstorm so that participants can remember the things they've covered. Give a homework suggestion for participants to try between now and when day 2 begins, then end with a short closing practice. And that concludes day 1 of the Search Inside Yourself program.